No, Diddy, why? No, why?
Why do they always do it, man? Every single time I find a new artist, apparently they're having freak-offs. I guess we just have to accept now that if you're a successful musician, even sometimes when you're not, you might just be clinically insane. It comes with the territory. And this is why I am very interested in, should you support insane artists? Now, this is a question that anyone who's ever indulged in the stranger corners of music, especially the more extreme ends like extreme metal, black metal in particular, has probably asked themselves at some point. But I really don't think it's just metal. It's a lot of pop stars, rappers, big names. It starts to feel like every musician is completely insane. And I don't just mean insane as in detached from reality, although that is part of it. I mean insane as in they will say and do things that are genuinely awful. The amount of despicable behaviour that seems to cluster around music is really unfortunate. And I don't know why this is the case. I love music. And it's not just, the household names in these genres. You'll hear about it in like weird small bands too, like punk bands, metalcore, post-hardcore, DJs. For some reason, apparently DJs are like the worst people in the world. Sorry to any DJs watching this. You're listening to some obscure EP with 12 monthly listeners and then bam, controversy, abuse allegations, something really, really grim. And it's just like, why? Why does this have to be the case? Why does music attract so many strange people? And obviously, this brings us to the question, should you ever support them? I actually have quite a clear stance on this, but as always, I'm really curious to know what you think in the comments. So step one, let's define our terms. What do we even mean by support? And what do we mean when we say insane? So when I say support, I actually think there are two categories. There's listening to the music and there's financial support. Now, I don't think listening to someone's music, particularly in the modern streaming ecosystem or just through re-uploads on YouTube, actually supports them in any meaningful way, especially if you're not doing it through any of these avenues that actually gives them money. And even then, the payout is usually fractions of a penny, which is obviously deeply unfortunate when you're trying to support artists you like. But in the case of these absolute crazy people, it's probably in our advantage. But then there's financial support. Buying merch, buying tickets, vinyl, Patreon, this is where it gets more direct. Step two, let's look at the insanity problem. What do I mean by this? By insane, I don't mean people who are mentally ill, although arguably some of these people are. Let's be really clear. Mental illness is not synonymous with abuse or cruelty. They can coincide, but there are plenty of ill people who aren't cruel. What I'm talking about is a behavioural pattern that could be better described as corrupt or morally unmoored, morally bankrupt even. People doing things that are actively and persistently harmful. You could make a psychoanalytic case here. Freud talked about sublimation, the idea that artists channel dark impulses into art. But what happens when the boundary breaks down? When the act of creation stops being a substitute and becomes a shield? Philosopher? How on earth have I pronounced philosopher that way? I'm sticking with that. I can't do it again. Philosopher. How did I even say that? I don't even know. Philosopher Theodor Adorno, in aesthetic theory, suggested that art's very capacity to resist social norms is often what makes artists antisocial. Maybe music, especially in its more extreme or transgressive forms, just attracts people trying to escape moral accountability under the banner of expression. But whatever the case, these academic tangents aside, there are some people doing truly despicable things. And when I talk about insane artists, I'm using that term very liberally. I, of course, mean morally corrupt individuals. So, step three, listening versus funding. So, here's where I land. Is it just listening? Honestly, if it is, I'm fine with that. I can completely separate art from artist, at least in terms of personal enjoyment. Not everyone can, and I think that's completely okay. I think that comes down to your own personal disposition. Doesn't matter either way. There's no morality behind it. Whether or not you listen to an artist, whether or not you enjoy art from a morally bankrupt person, is to me amoral. It's neither moral nor immoral. For me, the division is really quite clear. But financial support, that is a different story. Take a genre called NSBM, which stands for National Socialist Black Metal, as an example. Now, this is a case where the ideology is in the music. You're not just listening to someone who privately holds these abhorrent views, you're engaging with someone who has made something to promote them. And purchasing that music and supporting the artist financially is personally what I'd draw the line. Because that, for example, is an ideology where someone is overtly contributing to a level of hatred and malice in the world that I personally don't like, and you don't know what else they're doing. Now, that doesn't mean you can't support artists who you don't completely agree with, because you never know when you give someone money what they're going to do with it. But I think it's completely fair to say, no, I don't want to financially support someone who is doing something that is actively contributing to hate in the world. And for me, that's why the division is clear. I can listen and enjoy the most extreme, crazy music, people saying most heinous things, but as soon as I'm asked to fund their lifestyle, that's where I'm going to have a problem, especially when there are so many artists who I would like to support who aren't spouting that sort of thing, even if I don't agree with them politically either. Even with more mainstream examples, you have rappers like Diddy, where serious allegations are tied to their lifestyle. When you support them financially, you're potentially facilitating those freak-offs. How crazy is that? If you've bought a P. Diddy album, you've potentially paid for the IVs that allowed those, what were they? Were they porn stars or sex workers or models? Someone to like have sex in front of him for like 48 hours straight. Crazy. You funded the whole ecosystem, man. Kidding, it's not your fault. You didn't realize he was having a freak off. But still, this is where I have a problem. So for me, I just can't support that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a freak. You know, I respect the freaky scale of Diddy, but it's just veered too much in the scale of morally corrupt as opposed to just freakiness. Even if the music's good, for me, that line between enjoying and funding is crucial. So here's my final thought. Can you separate art from the artist? People often say you shouldn't do this. But my question is, in what context? If we're talking emotional separation, for the sake of enjoying the song, sure, why not? That's up to you. If you can and you want to, go ahead. That's the category I'd fall into. But no one's obligated to make every cultural act a moral referendum. But when it comes to financial separation, no. I honestly don't think you can separate the two. Support is support. Money is movement. If you support the art financially, you support the artist financially. And that's it. Super quick one today, relative to some of the most recent ones I've done. Let me know what you think about this subject. I'm not claiming this to be a particularly controversial or interesting take. Rather, I'm sharing my own to broadcast into the void and see what other people think. That's really where I want this channel to go. I'll talk about some random idea and then I just want to see what other people think about it and get a dialogue going in the comments. It's so much fun for me. It's a bit of maybe a strange way to make YouTube videos, but I'm sure I will do some longer ones. I've just uploaded a longer one that I really enjoyed, that I'm really happy with. But at the end of the day, I really want a community of people who are just engaging and responding with their ideas. And obviously I'm probably not going to create that without making really high quality content. But for now, if anyone does watch this, please let me know in the comments what you think. Can you separate the art from the artist? Do you think it's moral to do so, and in what context? I'd be really, really interested to know. I personally love strange, esoteric music. I listen to all sorts of stuff, especially extreme metal and quite a bit of rap. So that's kind of why this subject has come to light, because there's a lot of controversy in those areas. But when it comes to the worst of the worst, I must say I'm not that interested in keeping them funded. So let me know if you'd like me to do another video, talk about anything else. Let me know what you think in the comments about supporting art. I'd love to hear it. As always, have a nice day and peace out.